Who doesn't enjoy a glass of wine after a long day at work? Don't worry, I'm not going to tell you this isn't normal. In fact, a 2025 study by Alcohol Change UK reported that 64% of workers use alcohol to de-stress. This is because alcohol triggers the brain's reward system, leading to feelings of pleasure through dopamine and endorphins. It creates a sense of euphoria, relaxing the mind, lowering anxiety, and increasing social confidence. All positive. So in conclusion, science itself says it's an amazing antidote to the everyday struggles of life. But as we all know, this is not the case. Addiction. Addiction is a unique condition. It's characterized by a strong, uncontrollable urge to engage in certain behaviors. It sits at the intersection of biology and psychology, affecting each person in an individualistic way. For me, addiction can only be described as a disease. Now, it took a while for me to grapple with this concept. For a while, I'd believed that if it was self-inflicted, surely a person could stop if they tried hard enough and really wanted to. But once addiction becomes a part of you, it is almost impossible to let it go. What makes addiction stand out is that we still don't quite understand it. We still do not know why some people can recover and remain sober, while other people relapse repeatedly. In a lot of ways, addiction can be personified, as both scientists and psychologists attempt to combat the power it can hold over anyone in the world. The line in which you can say someone is an alcoholic or not becomes blurred when it is from your own perspective. You don't know whether to take what is happening seriously because you know that people have it worse. Therefore, it can be hard to be the one to diagnose a family member with such a serious problem. This is because we are aware of what an alcoholic should look like, based on exaggerated or unrealistic stereotypes, often seen in movies. For example, a paper bag drinker in the street, or romanticized lone wolf drinker, all dysfunctional, tragic messes. But many alcoholics can be defined by the term functioning alcoholics. Now, high-functioning alcoholics, or functioning alcoholics, are colloquial terms used to describe someone who is dependent on alcohol, but is still able to function relatively effectively in their everyday life. They'll be able to continue doing many of their daily tasks, like going to work or grocery shopping. However, commonly paired with this phrase, you may hear another term, currently functioning. This is used to emphasize that a person's ability to function right now is unlikely to last. And from my experience, this is seen to be true. The idea and addiction we've all got in our heads, that story comes partly from a series of experiments that were conducted within the 20th century. They put a rat in a cage and give it 2 water bottles. One is just normal water. The other is water laced with either heroin or cocaine. The rat will almost always prefer the drugged water and kill itself quite quickly. However, in the 70s, a psychologist called Bruce K. Alexander looked at these experiments and he noticed something. We're putting the rat in an empty cage with nothing to do except these drugs. So he built something he called a rat park, with lots of cheese, colourful balls, lots of tunnels, lots of friends. And in alongside all of this was both the normal water as well as the laced water. Here's a fascinating thing. In Rat Park, they didn't like the drugged water. They almost never used it. None of them ever used it compulsively, and none of them ever overdosed. Rats had almost 100% overdose rate when isolated, but almost 0% when they had happy and connected lives. Now, reading this study can make a person who knows someone who suffers from addiction wonder many things. Do they feel lonely? Why do they feel alone? Am I not enough for them? When people talk about alcoholism, they often focus on the person holding the bottle. But today, I want to talk about the people standing behind them. The people that devote their life to understanding why a person becomes so dependent on one certain thing that they no longer view any aspect of their life to be of importance. Growing up in an alcoholic home, you become an expert on micro-expressions: a sigh, a slamming door, an absence. The brain adapts by becoming hyper-alert. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, which is a survival mechanism where the nervous system is always on guard. Now, upbringings play a crucial role in psychology because it shapes the foundation of who we become: our beliefs, behaviors, and emotions, and relationships. Our childhood, the environment we grow up in, and the experiences we are exposed to shape the foundation of our personalities and even brain structure. Having said this, growing up in an alcoholic home leaves you in a constant state of uncertainty. You become the parental figure long before you should be. the roles reverse and you find yourself becoming a full-time care worker at the age of only 14. This is known as parentification. A study by Chase, Deming, and Wells found that parentified children often grow up to have distorted beliefs on responsibility. As adults, they may struggle to ask for help, may feel guilty for feeling sorry for themselves, and may believe their value lies in taking care of others. A common phrase within alcoholic homes is, "If I am perfect enough, maybe they won't drink." But addiction does not take into consideration perfection. It takes into account euphoria and how to feel it. Silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the strategic kind. In homes marked by alcoholism, psychologists found that children become something known as emotionally suppressed. This is the act of consciously trying to push down and ignore feelings or emotions instead of expressing them. A study by Scher and Levinson found that children of alcoholics often struggle naming, expressing, and processing feelings. As adults, these children may seem calm and capable, but in reality, they have never learned what to do with their emotions except silence them. They learn to separate their personal life and their social life into two distinct identities. You don't talk about what happened last night. You don't tell your friends. You don't seek comfort or advice. You ignore the problem. Instead, you find comfort in forgetting, while you can, when no one knows, when you are away from it all. There are three major rules that exist between families who have someone who suffers from addiction. Don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel. Dr. Claudia Black, an expert in addiction and codependency, addresses these three major rules within her book, It Will Never Happen to Me. Don't talk. This rule starts through rationalizing the problem, making it seem somewhat normal. In most families, this is not an excuse-making, but rather the addiction is not discussed, as if they don't talk about it, it may just go away. However, this leads to the child believing that if they were to break this rule, they would not be believed. Or rather, they don't know how to talk in order to break it. Don't trust. Trust is based on confidence. Confidence in a person that has the ability to judge you, misunderstand you, and not listen to you. This component is often missing within a home taken up by alcohol as well as outside of it. As a society, we have social rules on what is acceptable to discuss and what is not to be discussed. Addiction is not to be discussed, because if it is, a vulnerability is created, and along with that, an identity. Don't feel. This last rule is a result of a combination of the other two. It roots back to the idea of emotional suppression. It is a coping mechanism in which you allow yourself to feel normal despite witnessing the most abnormal experiences. You seek comfort in becoming desensitized as you choose to no longer face your emotions. Now, I've always been interested in psychology and the way the mind works, but the reason I wanted to do this talk today wasn't just because of my love for the subject. Loving an alcoholic can be hard, and I know that many people listening to this talk will be able to understand that. Watching someone you care about disappear behind their addiction is a type of loss that is difficult to comprehend, as you grieve someone who is still very much alive, but is no longer themselves. But no matter what circumstance you are in, it's important you always remember, you're allowed to talk, you're allowed to trust, and most of all, you're allowed to feel. Thank you.